IVM.
Over the past 3 episodes of Cyberpoint by Checkpoint, we've talked about phishing, ransomware, and data privacy on the internet. However, as threats on the internet rise, we also need people who can help protect us from these threats. Hi, I'm Shiladitya Mukhopadhyay, and in this fourth and final episode of this series of Cyberpoint by Checkpoint, we talk to Mr. Prakash Bell, who leads the security engineering team for India and SAARC at Checkpoint Software Technologies. We speak to him about careers in cybersecurity. We intend to discuss multiple questions like how to enter the world of cybersecurity, what are the different career options that one has here, and how do experts in this domain stay updated with the most recent threats. This and a lot more on the other side of this short break.
Do you wonder why China does the things that it does? Or want to know how we could improve online privacy? Or perhaps you're thinking about how we can kickstart India's economy? If you'd like to search for the answers to such questions, check out All Things Policy, a daily public policy podcast that covers everything from employment figures to aircraft carriers. Tune in from Monday to Friday for new episodes and fresh takes.
Hi, Prakash. Welcome back to yet another episode of Cyberpoint by Checkpoint. So good to have you here.
Thank you, Shiladitya. Nice to meet you again as well from this episode.
Yes.
And
Yes, absolutely. We've been having a lot of nice conversations thanks to you. And I think, this whole series, the kind of episodes we've had, the topics we've covered, they've been so informative. You've obviously been, sharing so much detail with us, but in such a easy to understand and, concise sort of a way. I think today's topic is, I find it to be a perfect sort of extension of all the three things we've already spoken about and this fourth episode, we actually are going to talk about how someone like yourself came to be the kind of specialist and expert that you are in the space of cybersecurity, and of course what others can learn from you, what they can understand about this domain, about a career in cybersecurity, and that's our topic for today. So thank you once again, and over to you to sort of tie this up in a nice bow for us as we proceed with this fourth episode.
Sure. Thanks, Shiladitya. Again, my pleasure to be here. And this is a topic which is close to my heart, as well as many of my colleagues and co-workers' hearts, and even our leaders in the company and the industry, right? So if you look at cybersecurity today, it has come to the fore. It is a very, very important area today for businesses to sustain and continue to be operational. The reason is, over the last couple of decades, especially particularly in India, we've leapfrogged even some of the other nations in terms of adopting digital technologies. Case in point, like your UID initiative by government, right? And even the COVID, when the COVID calamity struck us and we had to suffer through the pandemic, and we still are recovering from it, right? So government initiatives, many of these things have been digitally driven, and digital transformation has been at the forefront for many organizations as well as government departments. And what this has all meant is that there is a ton of data, citizen data, private information, as well as transactional information that are happening electronically in terms of interacting with banks, buying, selling, or transferring money, and so on and so forth. Everything has gone digital. And with that, the attack surface is also increased a lot, because now people are doing transactions from their mobile devices, and they do it from anywhere and everywhere using laptops in public Wi-Fi hotspots, while on a train, on the move, and so on and so forth, right? So considering this, I think everyone is now looking at cybersecurity as a very important area for business continuity, as well as for individual hygiene in terms of being able to stay digitally active. We do not want to catch an equivalent of a virus and kind of be down completely or offline because we are not able to conduct our business, or even at a personal level for that matter. So with that said, I think while it has been growing, it's a very important area. Just to sensitize how important it is, over the last 5 years in particular, cybersecurity has vaulted into the top 3 of CIO priorities for many of the organizations. And while I say CIO, this is also true for schools, which were operating kind of online for the last couple of years. And many of the classes and study material have been exchanged over email and so on and so forth. And I'm sure in the previous episodes you and I spoke about, we touched upon various aspects like ransomware, phishing, and so on and so forth, which all have become commonplace, right? So the overall cybersecurity awareness is very, very high, and businesses are very, very should I say, attentive about what needs to be done to secure the digital landscape. And to give a sense in terms of why it is so critical, is that at a national level, governments are looking at this very closely. Case in point, President Biden announced the need for specific initiatives around creating and developing cybersecurity awareness as well as cybersecurity knowledge among everybody and create a talent pool there. So likewise, I think every nation is trying to get ramped up on this area, and it's becoming a need of the day.
Yeah, and given that you've been in this industry for some time and you've seen it sort of evolve, like you said, becoming this top three priority for everyone. What would you say about the past era? Let's say when you got into your career and that transformation of how it is now.
Sure.
What could you tell us about your early days, for example?
Definitely. I think if I were to look at my career as well, I started off as a software engineer, focusing primarily on systems and systems engineering, to say that. And from there, developed an interest in data networking and kind of specialized myself in integrating multiple different protocols. In those days, you had quite a few popular protocols you were internet-working with and interconnecting systems to start communicating with each other. That is where my interest kind of
Right.
grew.
Right.
And that slowly led into security aspect, because security and data networking to an extent became inseparable. You want to have the communication flowing, but at the same time you want to put in safeguards and guardrails to make sure it is safe, and your whatever transaction or communication you're doing is safe and secure within the organization or even externally to third parties and so on and so forth, right? So that is where I began. And more importantly, Checkpoint, if you look at the history, our founder, along with his colleagues, was the inventor of the stateful firewall. And in many ways, we take pride in saying that we probably spawned the cybersecurity industry in a very big way.
Yeah.
And 3 decades later, nearly, we still continue to be at the front in terms of leading where we are. And cybersecurity continues to remain a very, very important area. And there is a huge demand for cybersecurity now for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, that organizations are needing talent in a big way. And just to give some idea about what is the demand available for this, because cybersecurity is now in the top 3 focus areas for any business or CIO, it is probably in the top 2 as well, alongside some of the other business initiatives that they are running. This industry has been growing almost at a rate of about 11 to 15% year on year, roughly. And it's about a $150 billion business that we have worldwide. And out of which $70 billion of that is in services. And you all know that India is a large services hub with many of the global giants based out of here. So there is tremendous opportunity for us and the current generation as well as the next generations to start equipping themselves and starting to participate in this industry, which is growing very rapidly. And as per estimates, I believe we are anticipating around 1.5 million unfulfilled positions in cybersecurity by 2025. So there is a huge responsibility on all of us to kind of go fill that gap and make sure every nation is self-sufficient. At least if I can't speak for other nations, we can speak on behalf of India and trying to see how we can bridge the gap and get ready for what is coming at us.
Wow. I mean, on that figure which you just mentioned, what are the kind of jobs? If you could just elaborate, let's say, maybe when the early days of cybersecurity, it was probably sort of simplified. It was a catch-all sort of a role, but I'm sure now there are these specialized roles of which are very much in demand. Could you give us a little idea about the kind of specialist one can be?
That's a very interesting question. And as you rightly said, when I began my career, a simple firewall or some access policies with some controls in terms of who gets allowed to access certain applications or parts of network was by and large sufficient, right? And this coupled with something like an antivirus would probably be your entire arsenal of getting protected in terms of security point of view. But over a period of time, the threats which are attacking us have become very sophisticated. And today, and I think I mentioned this in the previous episode, so I think we have different generations of security that we have spoken about in the previous episodes. And as you would see, we progress from simple antivirus protection onward to firewall, IDS, IPS, and so on and so forth. The attacks have become very, very sophisticated. We have also started to look at what we call as Generation 5 currently, which is attacks happening on a multi-vector, which is like on different vectors in different locations at the same time, and also happening on scale. And what this means is that we not only need to know about the known threats, but also be ready for unknown threats, looking at the behavior of
Mm.
certain applications or software code and so on and so forth, which means a lot of dependency on AI and ML has grown over the years.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, this is very different from where it was when it started, because in those days, as long as you knew a threat and you had a measure in place, you kind of were protected. But today, we are dealing with a lot of unknown threats and what we call as zero-day threats, which would probably get discovered anytime using these sophisticated tools if we have the right kind of tools to capture them. So that is a significant shift in terms of what we are looking at today. It is a very, very different era from where it all started about a few decades ago.
And these, obviously, you mentioned you in your early career were a software engineer, and obviously then that went into this sort of a specialization. What you're mentioning today, I think the diversity of the skills that you need are also huge. I mean, you could specialize in one or many kinds of skills to become an actual software engineer, to become a cybersecurity expert per se,
Absolutely.
is what I understand,
Absolutely.
right?
So when like maybe a decade or two ago, a good understanding of data networking fundamentals with the different protocols and a good level of understanding on encryption and various security methodologies was by and large
Right.
adequate, right? And then the security gateways, or what we call as simple firewalls, have also become very sophisticated. They started having multiple layers of capabilities in them, like protecting themselves against IDS, IPS, or intrusion detection and protection is the way we
Mm.
call it.
Mm.
Antibot, your antivirus, then threat emulation and extraction. Each of these capabilities kept layering on top of each other, thereby making it as a very unified device capable of doing multiple things and also very, very sophisticated from a security standpoint. So when
Mm.
you get into that level of technology and sophistication that is required today, naturally the skills that are required is also very deep, and you can probably diverge into some of these areas and develop deep
Right.
specialities as well. Like
Right.
we do not stop at just protecting data at a network level today. We need to worry about application security, particularly in a cloud
Right.
environment. You are running hundreds and thousands of servers which are getting spun up, serverless instances, for example, which spin up
Yes.
and die after the work is done, right? But you need to have
Right.
a secure communication happening between all of this, which means you can develop specialization in multiple areas. And to just to give you an idea, going into this, I think people need to be knowledgeable about how to secure my on-prem devices. How do I secure my mobile endpoint devices like laptops and mobile devices? And on top of it, how do I secure my cloud infrastructure? Not only just the traffic going in and out, but also the
Right.
traffic happening within the cloud, the east-west traffic, the way
Oh,
we call
yes.
it, and protecting all of
Yes.
this.
Wow. So what kind of a degree? I mean, I know this is probably a deeper question, but imagine if I were a student today or someone sort of want various stages of my career, I could choose to sort of dive into cybersecurity. But what are the prevalent, let's say, certifications or degrees, experiences one could easily take to sort of kickstart this?
Sure. So today the opportunities are there, and again, the cybersecurity as a field itself has also matured, gotten very specialized. So there are different degrees or kind of specialist certifications available for each of the areas one would want to pursue. But fundamentally, if
Mm.
one wants to start a journey in cybersecurity, I think starting with data networking fundamentals is going to be very, very vital, and better
Okay.
understanding of protocols. And specifically today, I think the world is predominantly talking TCP/IP, which is the
Right.
language of the internet or the protocol that is used on the internet predominantly. A good understanding of TCP/IP with data networking fundamentals, with a good level of foundations in digital security, such as encryption, hashing algorithms, tunneling protocols that are used. How do you set up VPNs or virtual private networks? Those kind of concepts, if one is able to build on and then get into things like understanding how a firewall operates, would lay a very, very strong foundation. And to accomplish this, there are multitude of industry certifications available, including security bodies as well. Like SANS.org offers many of these trainings, and various certification programs around CISM, CISSP, and so on and so forth. These are not only taking care of technology part of it, but are also from an operational and a management part of it as well. So one will have to
Mm.
decide, would they want to be completely a techie, or would they want to go from a techie to a slightly managerial disposition towards a
Right.
CTO or a CSO or a security expert kind of a role. Basis that they can forge different paths in terms of how they want to pursue. And I can talk a bit more about in terms of how we are enabling some of this
Of
as well.
course. Yeah. I mean, I imagine Checkpoint being a pioneer in the industry and, like you said, probably created the field. You must be already doing a lot of programs and for both your internal teams and for external members. It would be great if you could share a little more about that.
Absolutely. So, as I said, we realize the importance of security awareness as well as educating the new generation of folks who are coming out of colleges, in particular, to have the right kind
Correct.
of background in cybersecurity. So, we have different programs which we have launched, and all of this is consolidated in one particular portal, which I think our listeners can check in our podcast notes. We launched a program called as a Mind program, which is all encompassing in terms of looking at different ways of offering security knowledge to the public as well as to industry specialists. So, to start with, there are tons of free courses we offered on common portals, very popular educational portals, if I were to say that,
Mhm.
like Udemy and Library and so on and so forth. And there is nearly more than 20 hours of free content which people can get access to and start consuming to give them a very good understanding on the foundations of cybersecurity, what it is all about, to see what is their interest level with that. In addition to it, to create a groundswell of people with the right kind of skills in the marketplace, because businesses demand skilled people to come out of college. See, today we have computer science, we have
Yeah.
various other disciplines, but cybersecurity is probably taught as a academic subject. But there is a big gap between academics as well as what is really required in the real
Right.
life world, right? So, with that in mind, we've launched Secure Academy, very unique program which has been running successfully for several years, where top institutions across the world have adopted our curriculum as part of their main curriculum and interweave this as a subject and deliver this to their students. And this is not just learning about a platform or a technology, it is getting a complete knowledge on cybersecurity from the industry leader, which is Checkpoint, including having the ability to sit through a certification program for themselves as well. So this means when you come out of college, you're already job ready for most
Yeah.
companies. They can hire you, right? And then similarly, on the same Mind portal, we are also looking at senior executives, particularly C-level and so, who need to be readied for today's emphasis on digital transformation, digital adoption, as well as cybersecurity,
Right.
which goes hand in hand with that. So we have a CISO Academy targeting them. And over and above this, we also have other methods to learn, which we encourage people to do. There are um, gamification portals which are available, typically called as cyber ranges. We also have
Mhm.
one which is called as a cyber park, where people can join in and through playing a game, role playing in a game, they will start to solve real life problems within a cyber range, have escape rooms and go on a
Wow.
quest and so on. And that will be a great experience for them. And of course, last but not least, as always, people can listen to a whole bunch of podcasts that Checkpoint and many of the other security organizations would have to kind of gain the knowledge around this area as well. So these are all some of the ways where today it is possible to get acquisition to the knowledge which you would want or have
Right.
access to the knowledge you want in a very, very simple and easy manner.
Wow. I mean, it's amazing that there are so many resources, and of course, Checkpoint is doing a large part of ensuring that there's more awareness and more upskilling in this space. Little tangential question to this, or maybe even relevant, is the fact that the cybersecurity industry, like you said, obviously is now more mature, and there's so many formal career paths to it. But over the years, there has always been a sort of underground, if I may say so, interest in overall cybersecurity, right? I mean, probably driven by the fact that there are so many threats also, which keep coming up every year and every time some new technology platform is created. So, and we've always heard of these sort of terms like being, how can you become a hacker, how can you become a ethical hacker, or how can you contribute to the overall, let's say, machinery of cybersecurity, even as an individual, being a good actor, obviously. And I think we touched upon a few of these things in the prior episodes as well. But what do you think of that part of, beyond the, let's say, the informal cybersecurity industry, so to speak? And what's your take on that?
Sure. So that's a very, very important function for companies to kind of test drive their own digital security capabilities, right? So
Right.
from there, I think the notorious kind of a hacker is obviously the black hat hacker, the way we call them, are people who do hacking for their own personal interests and gain, and many times it's malicious. So that is something we don't encourage anybody to do, because in predominantly every country today that is unlawful. It can get you behind bars,
Right.
right?
Right.
But having said that, you can have the same kind of skills and put it to good use. And this is like, I love car analogies, Shiladitya, you know this
Yeah.
very well,
Of course. Of
right?
course.
If you're a racing driver, one of your jobs you typically get picked for is to test drive a car, a performance car, to see what can be improved and made better, and so on and so forth, right? So there are a group of hackers who develop those skills consciously, and these are also taught through books, courses, and everything, which we call as ethical hacking. And these folks are called as the white hat hackers, okay, because they are the good Samaritans. Now they
Right.
play a very important role. In some cases, or many cases, they get employed by companies to test their own internal security measures. So they act as an independent person, try to break into or try to find flaws in the organization or any infrastructure that has been set up. And once they discover that, they are able to work with the respective folks within the companies to fortify it and remedy the challenges. What this means,
Right.
your cybersecurity gets beefed up, gets better, and you are probably better protected. So this is like a test driving your entire digital security posture and seeing how vulnerable you are and exposing it, at the same time also fixing it in parallel,
Correct.
right? So they play a very, very vital part. And I'll tell you why this is important. From a role perspective today, while companies are protecting their digital assets, there are also a lot of governance that needs to be done. And many of these are government directives you need to be following
Mm.
to stay compliant with whatever is required for your business to sustain and run. Depending on healthcare industry, you need to protect the patient's records. If you're in the financial
Right.
industry, your transactions have to be secure and safe, your money has to be kept safe, right? And all of
Right.
these are regulated industries in many cases where you need to operate on, and you have to be under constant uh, ability to provide a compliance report as well as an audit report and so on. So these white hat hackers, the foundation for them are all part of organizations where they go deliver this as a service to companies, where they do these kind of organized audits, checks, and tests, and so
Right.
on. So it becomes a very important part of it. And typically, these are called as VAPT, or vulnerability and accessibility, as well as penetration testing. We do that,
Yeah.
or pen test for short, many times. It's an
Correct.
important function of kind of testing your digital infrastructure.
Wow. No, so I mean, even as an individual, or maybe even this is very much a career path if you want to become, let's say, a testing
Absolutely.
specialist, a cybersecurity testing expert, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Amongst all these skills and all these sort of career paths one can take, which the entire cybersecurity umbrella encompasses. If I were to ask you, just what is the most important skill, or what is that one thing which everyone must possess if you want to have a future in the cybersecurity industry, like what is that? What is that one piece of advice you would give?
So, since we are speaking about job roles, Shiladitya, I think the career options are plenty. The way I would bifurcate it is into two parts. People need to figure out whether they want to work for a end user organization, or from a who is consuming these technologies, where they can go participate and contribute their value, or would they want to be part of the IT industry itself, which could be part of an OEM or a services organization where they deliver this to their end customers, right? And of course, if you're working with a services organization or a OEM, you typically have roles in sales, where you could become a salesperson with a good amount of technical knowledge. And keep in
Mhm.
mind, to do a sales job also in these industries, you need a fairly good understanding of the technology foundation fundamentals. Besides
Of
that, we have
course.
specialized sales folks also, what is called as technical sales. And that is what is a team that I lead. These are people who are able to drill down a bit more deeper and set up demos, POCs, and even staging networks and scenarios for customers to figure out how it will help in their real life business. And be part of the sales cycle to help customers choose the right technology and product to solve their business problems. The other piece is that, of course, customers who run this equipment also need a lot of ongoing
Right.
support once it's put into production in their business. So you have a large opportunity in terms of being able to attend to break fix as well as improve the capabilities of the product, part of a large support organization within one of these OEMs or services companies. And last but not least, services is a huge business when it comes to IT. and India is a big hub in that front. This involves right from implementing these technologies for customers to realize the value of their investment, and also in terms of continuing to make sure that they stay in good health while through the operational life cycle, and also provide additional consulting services on top of it to a customer as and when they would demand from time to time as well. And last but not least, if you're at a end user organization, one can become an internal consultant to the organization, be a security specialist, then slowly develop skills and become a security architect. And then furthermore, they can start to say like, hey, now I don't have a good understanding on security. I also understand about the rest of the operations on technology. They could take up the step into a role of a CISO or graduate into a CTO, CIO, whatever fancies them. So from a career perspective, the opportunities are plenty. So it all depends on where one would like to follow the path they would like to charter for themselves and go down that direction. And I've not even touched upon some of the specialized area where you could probably get into development or writing code for some of these
Right.
cybersecurity platforms, build systems themselves. That is also there. And that also requires a good understanding of the cybersecurity technology.
Of course. Wow. So, and it's great to see and hear, of course, that there are so many avenues you can through this industry overall. And it doesn't matter what stage also, whether you're a student who wants to get certified, like the various avenues you mentioned, or someone even at a certain stage of their career, given their base skill set, like you were at one point, a software engineer could also develop deep specializations. So it's really good to know that there are so many options that exist. And I really hope a lot of people, maybe even some listening today, get inspired to sort of go down this path and fill those many 1.5 million opportunities that will show up. But, Prakash, in sort of amongst all the things we spoke about today, as a, let's say, like a final summary or a final advice to everyone listening here today, what would you say is that one most critical or important skill that you must possess if you were to build a career in the cybersecurity industry?
Sure. I think as a technologist, I will answer this question, not just as someone in the cybersecurity industry, because this applies across anywhere you do on the technology front or even in a generic role front, right? To be extremely strong in any technology role, I think understanding of the fundamentals is very, very important. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is there are many folks I've come across in my career who have possibly completed certification. Now, certification alone does not mean that you have all the fundamentals in place. While certifications are good to have, also focus on retaining that knowledge and developing on top of it as you go higher in the organization or in your career and so on. So the first and foremost is that get the fundamentals right and start building on it. And there is no stopping to learning in this industry. You've
Right.
got to be learning every day, and learning is a continuous process. It does not stop. And be ready to absorb that information or knowledge from anywhere. It could be from your peers, it could be working with your superiors, or from your third party consultants that you could be working with. It doesn't matter. Just continuously learn online, offline, books, whatever it is, continue to learn. And that is the second important thing. The third is practice by doing. Whenever there is an opportunity to go do it, even if it is not within your job realm, if you think it is interesting and it will add value to you, step outside your comfort zone. Go take it up, go do it, put up your hand and then say, look, I want to be part of the project. Let me get it done and get into it. And I think once you start doing these things on a regular basis, they all add up. And suddenly you'll
Right.
find that you have accomplished a certain level of knowledge and you've gathered a certain level of confidence and experience, which makes you indisposable on every front, you become the go-to guy within your organization or within your group that you're working with. So that is very, very important in my experience. And I think that's what I would advise to most folks to keep that continuous hunger, continue to learn, and strive to do the best in what you do.
Wonderful. I think these are golden words to live by in general, but very, very important given the kind of domain the cybersecurity domain is. You deal with so much sensitive information. At the same time, you have to be so proactive given the new amounts of threats that we've covered in so much detail over the episodes that we've done. So I think it's absolutely critical, like you mentioned, that you have an open mind. You always try to do better yourself and be much more forthcoming in your approach. So Prakash, thank you so much for sharing everything here. I think after today, I definitely know a lot more about the industry, not just the threats and the how to protect yourself, but also how interesting and deep it is, even as a career. So I really appreciate your sharing this with us, and of course your personal journey as well, which has led to you becoming the expert and the go-to guy for us. So Prakash, thank you so much once again, and of course to you and Checkpoint for sharing this journey with us.
Thank you, Shiladitya, for having me. And once again, to our audience, please check the podcast notes. We'll be putting in the links for all the training modules that I spoke of and the podcast, and so it'll be a great start for you. Go through it. And of course, we'll also put in a mail link. If you have any questions, you could reach out and get your queries answered.
Wonderful. Most definitely will. Thank you, Prakash.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
So thank you for tuning in to this episode of Cyberpoint by Checkpoint. Make sure to check out the show notes for more details on everything we talked about today. And also check out Checkpoint's website at www.checkpoint.com and follow them on social media.
Hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the 800th episode of The Habit Coach, Ashton is joined by Lilia Sabathier, a trauma expert and a healing mentor. They talk about what constitutes trauma and how to navigate it healthily. On Varta Lab, Akash and Naveen are joined by MC and designer Vishal Raskina. They share many interesting wedding stories on this laugh ride of an episode. On Ek Chuski Finance, Priyanka enlists 3 ways which will help women get over their fear of investing in the stock market. On This Round is on Me, Gauri is joined by Kalpesh Parmar, Country General Manager for Mars Wrigley. They talk about the impact of the pandemic and the overall growth strategies of Mars Wrigley. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet chats with playwright, director and actor Faiza Jalali, who gives us a peep into the world of performing arts in Mumbai. Once again, I'd like to remind you all about our merch store. Go check it out on the website, ivmpodcast.com. There's a tab for a shop. Click that and it'll take you to our store. Also, do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please do spread the word about the show. That really, really does help us. And finally, do remember, rate us or review us wherever you are listening. And that could also be YouTube. We have a number of channels on YouTube where you can go and check out our shows. You can go and find those channels on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, HDFC Mutual Fund, TransUnion Civil, SBI Life Insurance, Checkpoint Software, and Smallcase. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.